Good evening, sir. Today we are discussing on difficult situations in Hirschsprung disease. The outline of today's class will be first we will discuss about total colonic aganglionosis, followed by failed surgeries and complicated redos. Total intestinal aganglionosis I'm not covering because it will be covered as a part of neurocristopathies in the next class. And total colonic aganglionosis will see how it is different from the rectosigmoid or the classical Hirschsprungs that we see in terms of definition, epidemiology, family history, clinical presentation, radiology, histopathology, surgeries, and outcome. So the first clinical description of total colonic aganglionosis was given by Potter and Weeks in 1915. But it was not until 1947 when the first histomorphological documentation was given by Zulzer and Wilson. So hence it is named after them also, like Zulzer-Wilson syndrome. The first successful management of total colonic aganglionosis was in 1953 by Sandgaard. Coming to the definition, aganglionosis extending from anus to at least ileocecal valve, but not extending to more than 50 centimeter proximal to it. This becomes 30 centimeters in Japan. If it extends more than 50 centimeters, it is called as extended colonic aganglionosis or total intestinal aganglionosis. It comprises of 2 to 13% of total Hirschsprung disease. And what we see is the reversal of the sex preponderance. Like the regular Hirschsprungs is seen more in males, whereas when it comes to total colonic aganglionosis, we see an equal sex preponderance, or some literature have told that slightly higher female preponderance is seen. Familial risk is definitely higher with TCA, comprising 15 to 21%, and it goes as high as 50% when it comes to total intestinal aganglionosis. And what is noted is, with each generation, there is progression of severity. So there is increased penetrance. It is a strong genetic association with more than 70% of cases of TCA showing RET mutations, and endothelin system mutations are also, that is EDNRB and EDN3 mutations are also higher compared to the regular Hirschsprungs, and other mutations with respect to RET ligands are still under study. Coming to the clinical presentation, it is definitely a diagnostic challenge because the wide spectrum of presentation. It can present as an antenatal event, like antenatal diagnosis in the form of intestinal obstruction, and it can present drastically in neonatal presentation with acute abdomen in the form of either perforation of cecum or appendix, delayed passage of meconium, functional intestinal obstruction. Delayed passage of meconium is not very classical in total colonic aganglionosis. Normal passage of meconium in the first 24 hours is seen in 40% of TCH in neonates. So the late presentation, they can present either as undergone multiple surgeries for an undefined etiology, and they may be passing small amount of stools with failure to thrive. And when we examine these children, there is no classical blast that we see with the other Hirschsprung disease. Coming to the radiological findings in the form of barium enema, though there are multiple diagnostic set criteria to say that this is total colonic aganglionosis, like microcolon, question mark shape colon, that is the splenic flexure is not formed and it is shortened, featureless colon, and there is transition to dilated proximal ileum and the retention of dye more than 24 hours. This is not classically seen in all the cases. Now we see how many percent of these TCA children present actually with these findings. Microcolon, which we tell is present in less than 25% cases of TCA. Question mark sign is seen in less than 18%. Featureless colon is seen in only 25%. Transition to dilated proximal ileum is actually very rare, especially when the ileocecal valve is competent. So these are the two contrasting X-rays. In the first X-ray, we see that there is a classical question mark sign, whereas in the second X-ray, this is the dilated small bowel. Again, when it comes to histopathological features, in addition to aganglionosis, what we see in TCA is there is paucity or absence of thickened nerve trunks, which is seen in classical Hirschsprung. and also abnormalities in the interstitial cells of Kajal are seen. This might have an effect on intestinal motility in the postoperative period. There will be hypoplasia of extramural sympathetic innervation also, and there might be extended transition zone and region of hypogangliosis in TCA. Coming to anorectal manometry, it can present with normal inhibitory anal reflex. So the false negativity rate is 50 to 83%. So combining all the clinical, radiological and other pathological features, total colonic aglanosis diagnosis itself requires a high degree of suspicion and an enormously trained pathologist to actually diagnose the condition. Coming to the surgeries, the initial surgery is by early decompression by an ostomy in the most distal ganglionate bowel, followed by a second reconstructive procedure. But what is very challenging is to find which is the most distal ganglionated bowel, because many times we do an ileostomy do not function, and there is role of going and revision ileostomy because it is aganglionic. We have done a stoma in the aganglionic segment. So after ileostomy, there is complications of ileostomy in the form of prolapse or increased output. There is extensive peristomal excoriation, but all these requires very aggressive medical management. And in case of stomal surgical related problems, we go and fix the stomal related problems and do not hurry up in doing a definitive reconstructive procedure at an earlier date. So when it presents with high output and inability to gain weight, so there is role of total parenteral nutrition or a partial parenteral nutrition. And the timing of reconstructive surgery in TCA is usually delayed. Though there are some reports where they have done reconstruction by 6 months of age, what is advisable is to delay it for 12 months to 24 months. This was advocated by Case and Mayer. This is to ensure that the child has adequate period of growth, nutrition, the electrolyte abnormalities are corrected adequately, and most important is the ileum developed adequate functional adaptation. Coming to the surgical procedures of choice, we have multiple procedures. We go with classical Duhamel, Svove, Swenson's. Other than classical Duhamel, Svove, Swenson, we have Martin's procedure and Kimura's and J pouch anastomosis. So this was the first original work by Martin, where he used the descending colon, and then he only revised it to use along the entire aganglionic colon. Then comes the Kimura's patch. Kimura's is done as a stage procedure, where as they noted that the ascending colon has got much higher water reabsorbing capacity. So then instead of descending colon, they use the ascending colon for to decrease the decrease the stool output. So it is done as a staged procedure. First it is incorporated into the ileostomy, and then it is brought down as pull down. This is the ileal J pouch ileoanal anastomosis. So this is the Kimura Martin's procedure done in our hospital. Coming to the outcome, this is from the British Journal of Surgery, published in May 2020, which shows that the mortality associated with TCA is 4.3%. This is definitely lower compared to the previous studies because of good management of enterocolitis associated with TCA. And bowel continuity, they were able to establish in 70% of cases. Some of them are still followed up on ileostomy. Some of them have already chosen permanent ileostomy. Reoperation rates are 4%, mainly because of distal A, the most ganglionated segment is what is important. So sometimes there is a transition zone or there is failure of the procedure. So reoperation rates are also higher. What is unique is Hirschsprung's associated enterocolitis is higher in total colonic agangliosis, and it goes up to 40%. And also post-operative enteritis is also higher, and other problems with TCA are extensive perianal excoriation. Supplementary nutrition was required in 47% of children, of which 33% required some amount of parenteral supplementation. either total or partial. This was the long-term outcome published in the same paper. What we see is the bowel functional score, whether it was straight ileoanal anastomosis or a J-pouch ileoanal anastomosis or Duhamel or Rabin's, all had similar outcomes when it comes to bowel functional score. And coming to the BMI in 56 patients who crossed the age of 2 years, most of them fell within the normal BMI range. Coming to the next section of our today's discussion, that is the failed surgery. Failed surgery is when we have done a pull through and it requires redo surgery either because of early or a late complication. Early complications can be functional or obstructive in the form of either mechanical, stricture, twisted pull through, spur, and Swerve cuff. Other complications, early complications are anastomotic leak or an abscess. Late complications are usually obstructive or fecal incontinence. When it comes to obstructive, it is either mechanical or pathological. Pathological could be because of a residual aganglionosis or a transitional zone pull-through or an acquired aganglionosis or internal sphincter achalasia. And fecal incontinence can be due to either damaged anal canal or a damaged sphincter. How do we approach these failed surgeries? First important is the thorough history and a detailed operative course, including all the histopathological slide examination. Physical examination, rectal examination is crucial, and radiographic water-soluble enema is important, and anorectal manometry and rectal biopsy. Rectal biopsy, if it is done in the same institute with a reliable pathologist, we can review our old reports. If at all it is done elsewhere and sent to us, definitely we need a redo rectal biopsy. In history, we have to concentrate on how is the diet of the child, how the bowel habits, especially constipation, how many enterocolitis or how severe is the enterocolitis, abdominal distension, incontinence, whether there's failure to thrive, and whether child is on any medication like laxatives or anti-motility agents, whether child is irrigation dependent or is on dilatation. On rectal examination, we should look for integrity of the anal canal, presence of a stricture, status of the sphincters. It can be complemented by using an endorectal ultrasound, presence of spur, or presence of a spasm, which indicates it was a Swerve's procedure, and review of rectal biopsy. So here are some of the clinical pictures. This is a twisted bowel, which was redone in the immediate post-op. This was referred from outside post Swenson's procedures with a leak. It had an abscess in the perirectal region as well as anastomotic leak. This is post endorectal pull through with a Swerve cuff. This is a case where the colon was pulled down through the mesentery of the small bowel, and the mesentery acting as an obstruction. This was a case of transitional zone pull-through, where we can see that there is a narrow segment and then there is dilatation. And this was a case which was where Duhamel was done elsewhere and child had leak in the immediate post-operative period, for which ileostomy was done and then referred. What we see in this is this part of the first thing is because there is splenic flexure is not released, this pull down might be under traction, and that is why we see this featureless. It could be either an ischemic event or tension on the pull down bowel. This is again an example of a tension in the pull down bowel. Here the bowel, we can see that the caliber, it doesn't look like a normal bowel caliber, it is smaller. And whenever we delay surgery in such cases with lot of tension, this bowel, though it shows ganglionated cells, when we pull down this segment, it might not be functional. So coming to the indications for redo surgery, it can be divided as obstructive indications and incontinence indications. Obstructive indications, Ralls divided it as immediate, early and late based on the timing. Within 6 months, within 3 years and more than 3 years. Within 6 months, it because of the gross anatomical indications like a twisted pull through, transitional zone pull through, or a leak. Early group, residual or transitional zone pull through comprises 40% of these children, and in late is mostly because of either residual, transitional, or acquired aganglionosis in 70%. So the conservative methods, what we try for functional or constipation, which is most common complication following Hirschsprung surgery, are dilatation, where if the child has undergone a Swarvis procedure or an endorectal pull-through, laxatives, rectal irrigations or enema, and anti-motility agents if child has got higher frequency, which is actually causing too much of excoriation or failure to thrive, botulinum toxin in cases of a cuff or internal sphincter achalasia. Operative methods. First, these are the operative methods which have been in practice: posterior sphincter myotomy or myectomy, redo pull-through procedures, and posterior sagittal approach, MACE, sphincter reconstruction, anal canal plasty. In this, the last three procedures are for incontinence complications. The first three are usually for constipation complication. This is a flow chart. So when the child post pull through is not doing well, that is when the child has got soiling, then we have to, through a detailed history and parectal examination, we get to know that whether anal canal and sphincters are intact and potential for bowel control. So when there are no anal canal is not intact or the sphincters are disturbed, then it means that the child is incontinent. So we can try enemas or a MACE procedure if the child is responding for bowel management program. And it can be complemented with using a loperamide or a constipating diet or pectin. If anal canal and sphincters are intact, then the soiling might be a pseudo incontinence. So then we have to give initially medical treatment after doing a dye study. In dye study, we have to see whether the colon is dilated or it's not dilated. If colon is dilated, definitely it is pseudo incontinence. And then we have to look for the causes like transitional zone or it's acquired aganglionosis. Then coming to other side, whether a child is having recurrent enterocolitis, distension or failure to thrive, then we have to again evaluate whether it's an anatomical problem like a stricture, it's a spur, or it's a Swarve cuff which is tight, or dilated retained distal segment which is not functioning, or a kink or twist of the pull through, or it's a pathological problem like aganglionosis or transitional zone. So in whom actually posterior myotomy or myectomy was initially tried is when there was a dilated colon with intact sphincters. They have given a trial of botulinum toxin, and if at all there was a clinical response with botulinum toxin, they have gone for myectomy or myotomy. But of late, this procedure has fallen out of favor because of risk of permanent incontinence. So myectomy can be done either transanally or posterior sagittal approach. Again, transanally it can be done either by raising a mucosal flap in the posterior aspect, like described over here, or it can be done using a longitudinal incision. This is the posterior sagittal approach. Coming to the redo pull-through procedures. So redo pull-through procedure requires a lot of expertise, and we have to go through the review of previous operative notes, whether how difficult the pelvic dissection was and what kind of procedures the child has undergone. Based on that, transabdominal approach is the best approach because we don't know the amount of pelvic scarring the child has undergone, and on table we can decide whether endorectal dissection is possible or not. If it is possible, we can go ahead and do an endorectal anastomosis, or else we can complete the dissection abdominally. So the technique and challenges with redo procedures are: first is the timing of surgery, especially when the pull through is done somewhere else and they have encountered a complication and they have done a stoma and sent. Suppose it was a classical rectosigmoid Hirschsprung's, they had a leak like in one of our cases, and they have done an ileostomy and they're referring the child late. What happens is the distal colon which is there, it is non-functional. So this non-functional over a time, even when we pull through, we retain the colon, might not function. Histopathologically, it may show ganglion cells, but it might not function. So the timing of surgery is very important. The choice of pull-through should be individualized based on the initial surgery and the present dye study and expertise available. Definitely lower abdominal incision. If previously hockey stick incision was used, the same incision can be extended, or we can go for a midline lower abdominal incision. Adhesiolysis should be performed and establish the correct level of pull-through segment. So the utility of frozen section is important. Either we can use frozen section if it is available, or we can plan it as a staged procedure where we do first initially leveling, multiple leveling biopsies, either laparoscopic or open. And then once we are correctly, we know the level of ganglionosis, then go ahead with the definitive pull-through. Complete mobilization is required, and ensure that we have to ensure that there is no traction. And important is ascertain vascularity. This is very important when we are doing the redo procedure in a very small interval. That is primary pull through we have done, and redo we are going in a very short interval. Then we don't know the status of the marginal vessels, so we have to be very careful about it. And when we have to sacrifice most of the colon and we have to pull down the right colon, we have to go with the tumble down approach. So these are the two techniques of tumble down. One is rotating it clockwise and getting the ilium and cecum on the left side, or other one is in the pelvis only, we have to rotate it, but ensure that there are no twists in the mesentery. So this is one of the tumble down approaches. And decision on protective proximal ostomy is done on table depending on how difficult was the redo pull-through procedure. And whenever previously Duhamel was done and we are again going in for a redo Duhamel, the bulk of tissues to be stapled is what we have to keep in mind. And definitely we have to ensure that there are no twist, kink or stretch on the blood supply. These are the various studies with different redo experiences. So most of the common redo procedures done are Duhamel, Swenson, and Suave's. Though some cases they have been successful doing endorectal pull-through. In our experience, we have 14 cases of redo. Primary procedure was 6 Suave's, 6 Duhamel, and 2 endorectal pull-through. And the redo procedures we have done is abdominal Suave's, which was we found it to be very safe as a redo procedure, because it involves less of perirectal dissection. And Duhamel, whenever Duhamel is feasible, Duhamel is the best, but with lot of perirectal fibrosis, Suave's is always safer. And one endorectal pull through we have done redo. The posterior sagittal approach in cases of extensive scarred pelvis as proposed by Pina. Coming to the procedures for incontinence, there's a sphincter reconstruction. In sphincter reconstruction, there is tightening of the sphincter anteriorly and posteriorly. So this is the appearance in before surgery and after surgery. But these are all mostly from the adult experience, extrapolated to very few pediatric children, pediatric population. So we still don't know the outcome on a long run. Similarly, anal canalplasty. In anal canalplasty, this is a prone jackknife position. There is incision given posteriorly, and then posterior wall of the anal canal is exposed, and the posterior wall is infolded and then held with interrupted sutures, and then it is repaired. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Vinipriya. I'll open this up for discussion. Sir, any questions, comments, and suggestions, sir?
Yeah, nice presentation, Vinapriya. It was good, very good.
Thank you.
I don't have much experience with these redo procedures. A few of them I have done. My experience is sort of mixed. I have not done any Suaves in redos. I have done, I think, one or two Swensons, and mostly I have done Duhamels. And I have had no problem in doing the retrorectal dissection, even in a redo Duhamel. When initial procedure was Duhamel, to do a redo also, I did not have much of an issue.
Sir,
So important. Yeah, tell me.
redo Swenson's was it not difficult, sir, because we have to dissect in the pelvis and
I
excisions.
know, I know. Yeah, it was difficult. Usually these procedures get over late in the day. You start in the morning, and when you're doing Swenson, you think that it is just little bit you have to do, and you end up finishing late in the afternoon by the time you finish it. And the Duhamels which I have done, I have not covered with colostomy. In the Swenson, I had to do a colostomy because very dodgy redo anastomosis. Fortunately, both the anastomosis held well. So the important thing is continence in these patients. So initially, I think a good number of them will be incontinent, and they will slowly improve in their continence. Generally, you have to be, good in counseling the parents about the problems of incontinence which can happen. And now with the advent of bowel management, you can manage most of these problems with some manipulation of enemas and pharmacological manipulation.
Yes, sir. True, sir. As regarding to redo surgeries, main thing is that's what we keep emphasizing even with the postgraduate. It is the technical. What has due diligence during the primary surgery, taking care to, as you mentioned, inferior mesenteric cut ligation, then mobilizing, and keeping the orientation intact. Because most of the cases have been where there have been probably technical cause as a cause for revision rather than a complication. Maybe complication would be in terms of leak or something which are very few. But proper diligence during the primary surgery and taking care of the principles of surgery would solve most the issues. The second would be though to plan your surgery, though we see newborns, in more case newborns, when you go out, you may see more little older age group. There again, you need to go back to your basics and see you can you do a primary with adequate washes, or you need to do a stoma. You should not be forced to do unprepared bowel or say, yes, I know how to do a surgery, I'll do this, nothing is going to happen. So these things you should be very much aware of. Prepare, go back to basic, prepare the bowel, see the bowel is caliber is good, no enterocolitis, and then do at whatever age you get to. So not to be forced to do a single stage or things like that just because somebody is putting prayer you or inadequate this thing. So you should be very clear with that. That is very necessary. And again, if there is a problem, people have done, even we have done myectomies before, but it's shown even simple myectomies in the long term, they end up with incontinence in the adult age group. So to wait on it, do the conservative as much as possible, and then take a call for redo procedure. That would be what were lessons we learned with the children with redo. Yes.
Yeah, I agree, Gauri. My chief in Vellore always used to tell us, always used to tell us, the most important responsibility of a pediatric surgeon, he should always remember. That's why pediatric surgeons are very humble, and they walk around with stooped shoulders because they carry the weight of the children whom they have operated, and they have to remember that these children have to be all right for the next full lifetime, which is almost
Yes.
like 100 years. So he used to tell us that remember that your surgery should last for not just 5 years, 10 years, or something like that. It has to last for minimum of 100 years. That's what he used to say. So, and he used to say that is why pediatric surgeons are always worried. They are very humble and they walk around with stooped shoulders, and they always, sort of, they are a little bit of defensive. So he was describing how a typical pediatric surgeon is. Not exactly all pediatric surgeons, but most are like that. That's what he used to say. So, and very often when you encounter problems in the patient, you yourself have operated, you feel so bad for them, for the patients. And fortunately, children bounce back. That's the most beautiful thing about pediatric surgery. Children bounce back, and very often with the second or third surgery, they usually do well, and they continue to thrive and do well. That's the beauty of pediatric surgery. And if you do the first surgery very properly, technically, as Dr. Gauri Shankar was telling, it is really it's a joy to see these patients come for follow-up and see how well they are doing. So beautiful to see them.
Yes, sir.
Yes. Yeah, and one more, as you mentioned, timing of surgery. That's what we notice in this reoperation group, sir. So if you're doing a stoma, do it most proximal available bowel as a colon, so that the colon is involved in the bowel movement, not to isolate it away from the bowel. So that even if you take time to come back and redo the surgery, say 1 year, 2 years, still the colon is functional to use subsequently as a tumble down as was shown in the picture. Otherwise, if you isolate that and say wait for 2 years, 3 years, then though the ball looks good, there are a lot of papers come where the fat is needed, fat acid is needed for the colon cells to replicate and have a normal function. So if you isolate this for many years, then the colon, though anatomically there, it will be wasted. So if you have to, by chance there is something gone wrong, you want to do a stoma, do the most proximal colon which is dilated or things where you say it's normal, bring it out as an stoma, so that that colon is part of the bowel flow, so that the function retains and you have adequate colon when you go back or whatever you plan. So that's what also we saw, because we had to sacrifice most of this colon when we did redo, because they were afunctional in a way, though small, spastic, and though normal ganglion, still useless in a sense. So some ended up ileum. So that's another thing. If you end up like that, so you use this, either do early surgery, early in the sense as feasible, 3 months, 4 months, or if you want to do a stoma, do it with the proximal most colon, so that colon is also involved. That's another point in a redo case if you are encountered one.